AI making decisions is something we hear about more and more, like algorithms for loans or even job applications.
Hmm.
But what if those algorithms are inheriting the same biases that have always been there? The ones that have been around for centuries.
Right.
That's what we're looking at today
Yeah.
with How White Supremacy Hijacks AI by Christian Ortiz, who's a global AI ethicist.
And that's a really important perspective to bring in.
It is.
Because Ortiz really gets into the nitty-gritty of these issues.
He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. He's
Right.
calling for a change, really, in how we approach ethics and technology.
Absolutely.
So let's unpack what he means when he talks about tools of white supremacy.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about, individual racism.
Right.
It's bigger than that.
It's systemic. It's about how certain structures and laws and social norms have historically benefited certain groups over others.
So kind of like, even if someone isn't actively prejudiced, they've inherited a system that's already tilted. Yeah, playing a game where the rules were already rigged without you even knowing it.
Exactly.
And Ortiz uses some really powerful examples to illustrate this point.
He does.
He talks about those anti-LGBTQIA laws in Uganda and how they often trace back to colonial-era morality that was, imposed from Europe.
Right.
So it's not just about a single law. It's about a whole framework that was designed to control certain parts of the population.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he connects that to, for example, patriarchal marriage laws in India,
Oh, interesting.
where, officially dowry is outlawed, but it's still practiced.
What?
And that practice creates this cycle of economic vulnerability for women, which just feeds into less opportunities, less autonomy.
Because they don't have the same economic power.
Exactly.
Wow. It's like you can't address one part without seeing that whole structure.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then how do those historical systems, those power structures, how do those actually get into AI? That's what I'm really wondering about.
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, because we're going from history books to lines of code.
Right.
And that connection feels really important to make.
It is, and it really boils down to data.
Okay.
And I don't just mean any data, but the specific data sets that are being used to train AI.
Right.
This is where the whole conversation around biased data sets comes in.
Okay, so biased data sets. I mean, is it kind of like that saying garbage in, garbage out?
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to teach an AI to recognize what a tree is, but you only show it pictures of oak trees.
Okay.
It might start thinking that a palm tree isn't a tree at all.
Yeah.
Just because it hasn't seen enough different kinds of trees.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So it's not just about how much data you have, it's about making sure the data is actually representative.
Yeah. So the AI is learning from what it's fed, but if what it's fed is already biased,
Exactly.
then it's just going to absorb those biases as if they're facts.
It will, yeah.
And this is where that historical context that we talked about earlier comes in, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it's not just random that
Yeah.
facial recognition software.
Yeah.
We've all heard about the problems with that, being used by law enforcement.
Yeah.
And there are all those studies that show higher error rates for darker skin tones.
It's a big problem.
And that's not just a glitch in the system.
Right.
It's because the data that was used to train those algorithms probably had way more lighter skin faces in it.
Exactly.
So it's like the technology is actually making the same mistakes that have led to people of color being treated unfairly by law enforcement for years and years.
Unfortunately, that's what's happening.
Wow.
And it's not just law enforcement either.
Right.
Ortiz talks about hiring algorithms,
Uh-huh.
the ones that are supposed to make hiring more efficient.
Yeah, make it fair.
Right. But they can actually end up reinforcing those existing inequalities.
Because they're working with data that already has those inequalities built in.
Exactly.
Okay, so say, for example, historical hiring data shows that women or people from certain backgrounds
Yeah.
were less likely to get those leadership positions.
Right.
The AI might just learn that those people aren't as suited for those roles,
Exactly.
even if the real reason was discrimination.
That's the danger.
It's like trying to use an old map to navigate a new city.
Perfect analogy.
You end up right back where you started.
You're stuck in the past.
Right. But what's the way out? If the data is the problem, how do we fix it? So how do we fix this? If the data is the problem, where do we even start?
Well, that's where this idea of culturally confident AI comes in.
Okay.
That's what Ortiz talks about.
Okay.
And it's not just about fixing the data itself.
Right.
It's about changing the whole way we approach AI,
Yeah.
from the ground up.
So culturally competent AI, what does that actually mean? Like, what does that look like?
So it means building AI that's sensitive to cultural differences,
Okay.
that doesn't just treat everyone the same, because we're not all the same.
Right.
Like, a doctor wouldn't treat a patient from a different culture the exact same way they treat someone from their own background.
Of course not.
Right. They take the time to understand a patient's specific needs and their background.
Yeah, their beliefs.
Exactly.
So we need to build AI that's aware of those things too.
Exactly.
AI that doesn't just see everything as like a math problem.
Right, because even data, even numbers, can reflect human biases.
That's true.
And we have to be really intentional about spotting those biases and then doing something about them.
Okay, that makes sense. But that sounds like a huge task. Like, who's actually responsible for making that happen?
Well, Ortiz says it's on everyone.
Okay.
Everyone who's involved in making AI, from the people writing the code to the companies that are using it.
So it's about changing the whole culture of the tech industry.
Exactly. And one way to do that is to bring in more people from different backgrounds.
Right. Different perspectives.
Yeah, because they're the ones who can spot those biases that other people might miss.
Right, and challenge them.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about the rest of us? Like, what can we do? We're not all coding AI systems.
Well, first of all, just being aware of these issues is huge.
Yeah.
Like, you're already ahead of the game just by having this conversation.
Right.
You can also support organizations that are working to make AI more fair. And when you come across AI in your own life, like those customer service bots or social media algorithms, ask questions. Find out who built those systems, what data they use to train them.
Because the more we know,
Exactly.
the more we can hold those companies accountable.
That's right.
It's like Ortiz is saying we have a choice. We can either let AI repeat the mistakes of the past, or we can build something better.
We have more power than we think.
We all have a part to play in this.
Absolutely. And the decisions we make today are going to shape the world of tomorrow.
And that's what Christian Ortiz is really urging us to think about.
He is. It's a call to action.
It really is. It's about recognizing that AI doesn't just happen, It's shaped by the choices we make.
Exactly. And those choices have real-world consequences for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to get it right.
I think that's a good place to leave it for today. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.